Hi, welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I basically just wanted to make a video on how I got all 9's at GCSE. So first of all, just kind of like a little bit about me. My name's Amisha, I'm in year 12. I'm doing 4 A levels, so I'm doing maths, economics, geography and politics, and I'm also doing an EPQ. For GCSE I did maths, English language, English literature, geography, Spanish, drama and RS. So I think I'll go over this subject by subject on how I revised. I think first and foremost, I think it's a really common misconception that to get all 9, you have to study for like 10 hours a day and like be revising like from like September to June. I'm here to tell you, like, with the proper like organization techniques and like all the stuff we're gonna go through in this video, you can literally start from like February onward and still get all 9's. So personally, I really locked in after mocks when I saw my mock grades, and they were good, but I wanted to do better. So it was after mocks I really started to pay attention, and then yeah. Okay, so starting off with maths, I think the thing with maths is like once you understand how to do it, it's really easy. I used a lot of YouTube to do maths. I often found that like in the textbooks, sometimes I didn't really understand the topic, or I kind of just wanted to see different like questions I could get, and for that I use YouTube. Some really good YouTubers I saw were the GCSE maths tutor, like Dr. Frost as well. They were really helpful in finding different questions and like going through it. I used to just have like a pen and paper near me, and I used to just do the questions and then just mark it with the walkthroughs, and then afterwards I would like also make notes on like how to do the actual question. So I had this notebook, and in that notebook I basically just like went through each topic that I probably like looked up or read from a textbook that I didn't really understand, and I just wrote down a couple examples, how to do them, and like maybe some like tricks I came up with while learning the topic that could help me remember. I think this is really useful because the night before exams, like you can just flip through this book and it just means everything's there in one place, and you can just review all your difficult topics right before the exam. So obviously, like, besides reading the textbook, which is 100% like super duper useful, I say like reading over each chapter and like attempting the questions underneath. That's like something you really have to do, because the subject specific textbooks for each exam board kind of like use. And as always, past papers are literally going to be your best friend. Like, I think I have an iPad, so on my iPad, I opened books, I imported like a bunch of past papers and I just did them and marked them. They repeat questions every single year, or like repeat the format. It helps you with your time management, so past papers is definitely a must. I recommend like marking it in a different coloured pen as well, so you can kind of see like working out according to the mark scheme. If you type walkthrough onto YouTube for that specific paper, you'll find someone going through it question by question. So you can just skip to the questions you are unsure on and kind of see how they've done it. So that's really useful. Maths Genie and Corbett Maths, those are really good sites for maths practice questions specific to like topics. So let's say you don't understand surds, just go on to Maths Genie surds questions and just do a bunch of questions and then mark them using the mark schemes. And that's really good because it gives you kind of like topic specific questions, and they just kind of get repeated with different numbers, usually every single year. For English language and English literature, I think my board is a bit different to what most people do. So I did IGCSE LXL, so slightly different. We had coursework instead, so that's what I found really useful with my grade. For the anthology, I found anthology really difficult. So how I did this was I annotated the anthology book, like using YouTube, using my teacher's notes, just making sure all the information was really like packed in there. And then what I would do is I would create like a little summary sheet for each poem, and then I would like blurt it out onto like a whiteboard. Blurting out onto whiteboards is a form of active revision, and it literally like makes your brain actively recall all the information. If you're just reading a bunch of annotations from the poem, it's not really gonna like help you like remember what the annotations exactly were, as opposed to the fact that if you're like writing it down on a whiteboard when it comes to the exam, and let's say you get that poem to like analyze or compare with something else, you kind of have the annotations in your head. Like if you're someone like me who struggles with like anthology poetry or like English in general, I would really suggest like just literally, if your teacher's giving you something like this, copy it down word for word, because it's the grade 9 analysis that the examiner wants to see. For the unseen, what I did was a lot of practice questions, and also online on YouTube you can see like a bunch of like people have given, I think it's called first rate tutors. I saw a lot of their YouTube videos and they kind of like tell you how to do like unseen poetry. I think they've gone over like anthology poetry and stuff as well, and they kind of tell you like the exact structure you should use, what things to include, like type of paragraphing you should use. I had a little book, and in that I kind of wrote like how to answer each mark of question. Like for example, for a 30 marker, how many like points I should be doing, how many points like within a paragraph, how many paragraphs to include, that kind of thing. And that really helped me because having it all in one place, again, like the night before exams, you can quickly just flip through it and it really helps like you memorize like what you need to do. And like again, to reiterate with English, again, past papers, use your teachers, like do a ton of like practice questions, practice essays and stuff, give it to them and like let them mark it, and then go over what you've done wrong and just kind of keep practicing, and I'm like, trust me, you'll be great. Moving on to geography, this is personally one of my favorite GCSEs, and it's also what I'm doing now for A levels. For geography, I would say for case studies, create a notebook, and for each case study write down, like let's say you're doing China, for China write down like 10 points, or you're doing Nigeria, write down like 10 points to summarize the case study. Also like make sure you do lots of facts and figures. Like you might not remember everything, but just like having it down is really useful for geography because you often need like data and stuff to get the marks. Also if you're doing like land formation, so one of my topics was rivers, so it was like, for example, how does like an oxbow lake form? I would have like all my land forms, and I'd say like 4 or 5 points for each on how it would form. And what I used for this was the mark scheme. The mark scheme basically tells you step by step what you need to say to get all the marks. So what I would do is I would find a past paper which says like the exact question. I'm looking for like a 4 marker or a 5 marker on like the formation of like an oxbow lake. And then I would literally write down what the mark scheme says into my notebook. And that would just mean that if like the question came up in the exam, I would literally have like a word for word like definition revised. And to revise that, obviously, like I would say again, get a whiteboard and just blurt it out. And I promise you, like that's the best way of active recall. I think this was more towards April, but me and my friend actually went to a cafe like maybe a couple times a week, and we did like some geography like past papers together. So we would print out the same one, we'd do it with each other, and then we'd mark it. I think that's really useful for geography because it helps you see the data that they're using, and then you can maybe add that to your notes. So let's say for a question, my friend has some more data on like pollution levels somewhere that I haven't included in my answer, especially for 8 markers and like longer answer questions. That's really useful because you can like now incorporate that into your answer. Okay, moving on to RS. If you do AQA, you know there's like a set number of marks that like repeats over all 4 like practices and belief sections for both the religions. And honestly, like doesn't matter what religion you do, the set like structure to getting those marks is the same. For example, in a 5 mark question, it usually says like give 2 beliefs and like use evidence about something. So for example, it said like 2 beliefs about like original sin. You can give 2 points, and then you have to give a bit of evidence with one of the points. So usually I would say stay safe and use a quote, because I actually remember like in my year some girls didn't use a quote and they didn't get the marks even though they used a belief that related. But so just to be safe, like memorize a bunch of quotes. In terms of like memorizing quotes for RS, flashcards are just completely amazing for this. I physically wrote down these flashcards because it was really useful just before the exam. I would just have my like mini pack of flashcards I just flip through, so they're just fresh in my mind. So what I did was I had like 1 pack for Christianity and I had 1 pack for Buddhism. For Christianity, I would like just have like a ton of quotes that I'd find online in my textbook, etc. Some of the quotes that I used were like quite reusable for like multiple topics. So for example, love thy neighbor, you can use it for like multiple things. I think it's really useful to have a couple of quotes like that. For Buddhism, I did the same thing. A lot of my quotes actually came from Google. Like I just Googled like a bunch of Buddha quotes and just wrote them down into flashcards. And that was really useful in my 12 markers because sometimes the textbooks don't give that much. especially for like Buddhism and stuff. Like Christianity, there's like quite a few quotes. With Buddhism, it's a little bit less. So yeah, you kind of just have to like research a bit, and you'll easily find like a lot of quotes that can be used. And then again, like with the 12 markers, do as much practice as you can. I remember the night before my paper 1 for RS, I like called up one of my friends, and we literally wrote down all the topics like going through the textbook that like our 4 markers and 5 markers could be on, because like it has to be something like specific from the textbook. And I think for a lot of our questions we guessed what came up. What we did for each subheading in the textbook, we came up with 2 possible questions that it could be, and we just kind of like verbally answered them and just made sure like if that came up in the exam we knew what to say. And it just happened by chance that like all the questions we came up with, a couple of them did actually come up, and that was really useful because we knew what to say. You can ask ChatGPT to come up with questions that maybe you haven't seen before, and that's really useful because it just gives you more like time management practice. And I know with like the 12 markers it's really time precious, so yeah, I think it's really good if you get that practice in. So I did triple science, and I got all 9s in that, and I think the main reason was again like active recall and past papers. I made really extensive notes using physics maths tutor and Save My Exams. Those were the 2 like saviors for my GCSE sciences, because using those I created all my notes. I did it for bio and chem. I didn't really do it for physics, but for bio and chem, I created on each topic. I made all my notes on that, and I just again blurted them. Another thing that I tried that really helped me actively recall this information was like kind of explaining it to someone. So what I would do, it sounds really stupid, but I would have like, I don't know, like an old teddy bear or something, and I would like try explain like, for example, osmosis or like mitosis to it or something. And that would really help me find the gaps in my knowledge. And then that way I would address it and like make sure I understood the processes. What I also did for biology specifically was that it was kind of time consuming, but it was so helpful in the long run. On an A4 sheet, I wrote down all the topics that had come up in each question for each paper for each year. So I know that sounds really complicated, but basically like from 2019 onwards to like 2023, which was what I had access to like for past papers, for each paper 1 and paper 2, I wrote down like, for example, if question 1 was like on like mitosis, I wrote that down, or question 3 was on like, I don't know, like evolution or something, I wrote it down. And then that kind of helped me see like what kind of questions came up most. So for 6 markers I saw 1 year evolution come up, but it hadn't come up for like any other year. So that kind of gave me like a hint to what my year could be, because they try to pick things that haven't come very often. And sometimes you're right, sometimes you're wrong, but it's a really useful way of seeing what could potentially come up. For chemistry, I didn't do that. And same thing for physics. I was quite lazy with these 2 subjects, but I made sure like, again, just grind like lots of YouTube videos, read the textbook, do lots of past paper questions. For physics, I was so thankful to get the equation sheets, because I genuinely don't think I could have gotten my 9 without them. But they were really useful. Like obviously make sure you know how to use the equations and revise all the units. What you can do again is like make flashcards on like units or like specific topics that you don't really understand. So stuff like the motor effect, I didn't understand it at all. So I watched a ton of YouTube and I made like flashcards on it, and that was really helpful to like kind of solidify my knowledge. I also don't know if I mentioned the Spanish, but use Quizlet, or like, I know people like to use Anki, but personally I think Quizlet was so good for me, especially for like vocab, because I used to just write down like the word and then on the other side like the English translation, and you can quickly like flip through. And with GCSE there's so much vocab that you need to know for Spanish or like whatever language, and I think that's really useful because it just makes sure it's like actively recalling and in your brain. Finally, this is like really niche, but if you do drama, I did Cambridge IGCSE, which is I think quite different to what a lot of people do, but performance wise, like I kind of had like a little like log, kind of just said what we were doing, because I think it obviously depends on what exam board you do, but you kind of have to write about your device piece and like your thought process behind it. So for my device piece, I like during it, I kind of just like made like a little log, or like what we were doing, what the scene was showing, kind of like what the message was a little bit. So that meant when I actually got to like writing it down, I kind of had like a mental like memory of like what we had done, because obviously you might perform your devising like months before your actual exam, so you might not remember exactly. So I would definitely say write down what you did, and that's really helpful. If you get a set text, it might be really useful to also like annotate it, and in a different book like kind of write down like each character, maybe some quotes that are really like relevant to them, some analysis, and that's really useful kind of when it comes to character analysis. Okay, so just some quick like general advice. How to avoid procrastination. I personally struggled like with procrastination a lot. I'd wake up like really late some days and be like, oh, I just can't be bothered to work. How I dealt with it was like I made my bed, I got myself a coffee, and I told myself if I put the work in now, like further on down the line in like August, it would really pay off on results day. What I also used to do actually was watch results day videos from previous years, and that kind of like got me into like the zone, if that makes sense. It kind of showed you what the future would look like. I usually used to look at like people who had also got like really good grades, because that I was like, I really want this to be me in like a year's time. So that was really motivating. Also, if you like struggle with like checking your phone, which I definitely do, keep your phone in a separate room. Like I don't think, even if you put your phone like off on the side, I feel like it's really tempting to grab it. So yeah, just keep it in a different room when it's like, so you won't really feel like getting up and going to get it. I think organization wise, like it's so important to be organized. Like keeping files and stuff for each subject with all your class notes, that's really useful. If you also want to have like a separate file for like past papers, that's I think really good as well. So what I did was I had a file and I had different file dividers for each of my subjects. Then I had like past paper questions and like specific questions for each topic, but like under the subject in the file. And like you don't have to complete everything, but do as much as you can, because obviously you don't have that much time, but it's really important to try get some practice in. That is all for today. I really hope this video was useful. Remember, don't take any stress. Obviously GCSEs are important, but it's not life or death and it's not the end of the world. Just try your best and good luck for your exams. If you have any questions or you want me to expand on anything I talked about in this video, like whether it be general advice, subjects, please let me know in the comments and I can come back to you.